through that process that I discovered that at that point in my life, I actually enjoyed the writing a little bit more than the performing. Hi, I'm Christine Newell, author of 5 Seasons in Seoul, which was published by Affirm Press on the 25th of February this year. 5 Seasons in Seoul is a memoir about my experience living and performing in South Korea. My father's death after a prolonged illness left me struggling with debilitating anxiety and depression, and I was at a low point in my musical theatre career dressing up as a dinosaur to pay the bills. So when a role with an experimental theatre company based in South Korea came up unexpectedly, it seemed like the perfect escape from my problems. But I soon discovered there's no running away from yourself. So the book follows my journey from the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne to the affluent district of Gangnam in Seoul, where I faced a lot of unexpected challenges adjusting to my new job and home. It's an exploration of Korean life, the food, landscape, and culture, as well as a deeply personal story of travel and the ways it can transform us. When I arrived in South Korea, I was really struggling with my mental health and I was feeling quite isolated. And that was also a comfortable place for me. I think when you're struggling with your mental or physical health, you do withdraw from the world. It's not really what you want. You want connection, but you can't help but withdraw. So when I arrived in South Korea, life and work was very communal, especially around food. So I couldn't hide away anymore. My work was very challenging. The director of the theatre company that I worked for, he was very tough and he demanded a lot and he didn't put up with people who wanted to hide away in the corner. He was constantly wanting us to challenge ourselves and push ourselves, and I wasn't in that place. So that was a big transition for me and ultimately something that I really needed to overcome some of my fears. And then I found that my personal life followed the same pattern. At lunchtime, we would all gather around a table. We would all go to a nearby restaurant and we would eat together as a group, as colleagues. And then over time, that started to feel like family. And, I was really forced to immerse myself in the culture and really connect with my colleagues on a deeper level and also to learn the language. It was very much sink or swim. I didn't have a choice like I did back home. And yeah, it just ended up being such a transformative experience. At the start, I really resisted the change and how confronting it all was. But by the end, it was just the best thing that could have happened to me. I walked away with a whole new outlook on my creative process. I walked away with a whole new outlook on life. South Korea was never part of my plan. I had my life figured out and I knew what path I wanted to go down, especially with my career. And then things started to unravel and South Korea came up and it was a case of, well, I need a gig and I need to pull myself out of this hole. So this is what I'm going to do. But it was never where I saw myself. And I think the biggest lesson was that something that I didn't expect, that I didn't plan on, and also something that I went into with very minimal expectations ended up being one of the most profound experiences of my life. It is my first book. I've always really loved memoir as a genre and the way it gives the reader an intimate glimpse into another person's life, the adversities that they've faced and how they've overcome them. So I suppose when writing it, I really wanted to write something that was relatable, that the reader would be able to connect with. And I've always found reading memoir really helpful when I've been going through challenging times. So I hoped that by being extremely honest about what I've been through, that it might make someone else feel just perhaps a little bit less alone. I also really wanted to communicate my love of South Korea and Korean culture and just share the many ways that that experience enriched my life and communicate to my readers how much South Korea has to offer. I didn't keep a journal when I was over there, and I really wish I had, but at the time I had no idea that I would one day write a book about it. Uh, I suppose the book started as a show. So I have a background in musical theatre, as I've mentioned. I went over there to perform with a theatre company. And after I came home, I went to university and studied songwriting and composition. And I was really keen to just expand my horizons a bit. And I started songwriting, and then that turned into writing a one woman show, which I performed at the Kew Courthouse in Melbourne. And it was through that process that I discovered that at that point in my life, I actually enjoyed the writing a little bit more than the performing. And the show was all about my travels, especially South Korea. And so that really just inspired the book. I would like to be a full-time writer, and I'd like to write a second book. And I'd also like to move into the travel and lifestyle space as well. Because it's my first book, there was a lot of trial and error involved in figuring out what worked for me. So I'm not really a big morning person, but I discovered through that trial and error that the morning was when I did my best writing. So I really kind of turned my lifestyle around and started to get up early. I tried to get out of the house, have a little coffee. I developed a little morning ritual, which is really lovely, and it makes it really special, I think. So I would have my coffee and think about what I wanted to achieve in my day. And I also found meditation really valuable. So I would start my day with a meditation and just to clear my mind, and also because it's memoir, to take myself back to that place and that time because it was a few years ago that I was there. So yeah, so that's how I would start my day, and then I would come home and just get straight into the writing because those hours before about 1 o'clock, I realized that they were my best hours to write. South Korea is still a really big part of my life. I've been back quite a few times since I lived there, and it was such a transformative experience that it's really stayed with me. I keep in touch with my colleagues. Sometimes they come out to Australia, sometimes I go over there. I was just there in July last year, and it was really beautiful to catch up with everyone and share the news that the book is going to be published, and that they're an important part of that journey. All right, this is challenging. I don't have my glasses on, but are you a footy or gallery person? Oh, that's easy. I'm a gallery person, definitely. I grew up in a creative household. Of my mum and dad were both musicians, and yeah, it was a very artistic environment. So I'm definitely a gallery artsy person over footy and sport. The role of the writer in 2025? That's a good question. I think it's to keep challenging boundaries and keep moving forward, keep the momentum going. I'm currently studying a Master of Arts in Writing and Literature, so I'm learning all about kind of the genre bending. So, yeah, I think it's just to keep looking ahead and not stay in the one place. I've always been a big nonfiction reader, so my favorite genre is memoir. So it wasn't really a big surprise that I ended up writing in that genre. I just love stories about real people, and I love learning what it's like to be them. I'm a big fan of Patty Miller and the book that she wrote called Writing True Stories. And it's a guide for writers on how to write memoir, travel writing, basically just any type of life story, personal essay. And she says that life writing gives the reader an opportunity to understand what it's like for another person to be in this world. And I love that. That's exactly why I gravitate towards true stories. I think there were a couple of authors and books. So as a child, I was a big fan of the Trixie Belden series, which is very different to what I would write in now. But that's when I think I really learnt to lose myself in a book and lose myself in a story and escape into, a make-believe world. But then as I got older, I started to gravitate towards true stories. And I think it was those travel memoirs that were around years ago by Penelope Green, the Italian series, When in Rome. And then I think she wrote 3 books. And there was that one and Almost French by Sarah Turnbull. I think they were very popular in the travel memoir genre. And I absolutely fell in love with them. And that's when I kind of started to go down that road. What's next? Well, my memoir was only published a few weeks ago, so I'm still reveling in the joy of seeing it on the shelf. And it's so lovely to get feedback and hear what people are taking away from the story. I find that some people absolutely love the South Korean content and the food and the landscape, which is obviously a huge part. And they just say that they feel like they've been there. And then other people are tending to really gravitate to the personal story and take something away from that. So I'm just enjoying that at the moment, but I do have a few ideas. I would love to stay in this genre, and I would like to write something else in the near future. But my ideas are very, it would be hard to articulate them at this stage because they're just kind of bubbling away in the back of my mind. So yeah, I'm just in that place where I'm sitting down and just writing whatever's in my head, even if it doesn't make sense and even if I don't know where it's going. So just words on the page at this point. Thank you so much for having me.